Because if you look at popular culture and what kids seem to care about today, they care a lot more about being, TikTok influencers or writing code than they do about, getting their hands dirty building a physical product.
Oh yes, and that's definitely been a problem, particularly getting young girls to even take the STEM courses they'll need to have a technical kind of job. So then I've also, been involved with some people that started programs at the middle school and early high school to get children interested in manufacturing jobs. One of the things that was really having an influence was the maker fairs that were being held prior to COVID.
Today, we're talking with Michele Nash-Hoff, president of ElectroFab Sales. Michele is going to be speaking at the upcoming Del Mar Electronics Show, and she has been a staunch advocate for U.S. manufacturing, and so I'm very happy to be speaking with her today. Michele, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And you're a new face on the show. And normally when we have someone new on the show, we like to get a sense for their background. And of course, you can introduce what your company does. So if you could, please tell us about yourself and tell us about ElectroFab.
Okay. Well, I started in manufacturing as an engineering secretary at age 18. And then went to work for a small defense contractor, went to work for a larger defense contractor, Cubic Corporation, located in San Diego. And by the time I was 21, I was assistant to the manager of marketing of Cubic Defense. And then I worked a few years there, and then I quit and had children and went back to college and got a degree. And when I graduated, I got a job for a manufacturer's rep, and I knew how to read blueprints. I knew about manufacturing processes, so I started as inside sales and then branched out to outside sales. And then less than 2 years later, I started my own company, ElectroFab, in January 1985, so actually 40 years ago. So long history in manufacturing.
So you've really had a chance to witness how the industry has changed given globalization and offshoring and those kinds of trends.
Oh, I saw manufacturing going to Mexico in the late 80s and 90s. And I actually had the pleasure of being the first woman president of the San Diego chapter of the Electronic Representatives Association in 1990. I was also part of a women's electronics group at the same time. And our Electronic Rep Association founded a nonprofit organization, the High Technology Foundation. So I was the second president of that after I got done being president of ERA. And we had a big event in San Diego that changed everything. In 1992, General Dynamics closed all three divisions of their plants, and we lost 17,000 jobs in one fell swoop. So I took the advantage of being president of the foundation to put on a summit on what's being done to save manufacturing in San Diego. And as a result, that was then the city council person that had participated became elected mayor, and I got on the mayor's vision, was appointed to the mayor's vision 2003 team, and we had a vision for diversifying San Diego's manufacturing industry. And literally by work of committees and organizations, there was probably 30 different organizations involved, and we actually accomplished the vision we had for San Diego by 2003 and diversified I was on the Economic Development Reuse Process Committee for Naval Training Center. I was on the East County Economic Prosperity Strategy Task Force. And this got me involved in politics as well as and I ran for city council in 96 and lost. And then I was recruited to run for state assembly in the year 2000 and lost. But I had all these political connections and I was well known. And then I started seeing what was going on with manufacturing going to China. And as it turned out, I was the only one keeping track out of my database of what companies were moving manufacturing to China or going out of business because they couldn't compete. And so I wrote a report called the San Diego County Industry Report starting in 2003. I had 85 companies on my list. By 2007, it had grown to nearly 200. I was writing this report quarterly, and I got to be on radio and talk shows, quite regularly, because it was data that nobody else was keeping. And so by 2007, I realized it was going on all over the country, and it wasn't just California's bad business climate. So I started to write my first book on the subject, Can American Manufacturing Be Saved? Why We Should, How We Can, and it was published in May 2009. And that led me on a broader track of speaking at trade shows and conferences, and I started blogging, first for San Diego Newsroom, then for, I blogged for APC's newsletter, and then I got invited to blog for HuffPost. I blogged for them for a couple of years. Then I got invited to have my own column on Industry Week, and from 2013 to 2018, I had my own column on Industry Week, writing about ways to save manufacturing first, reshoring. I got involved with Harry Mosier of the Reshoring Initiative in 2010, and I became an authorized speaker on how to return manufacturing to America using total cost of ownership analysis. So Harry has given thousands of presentations, and I've given hundreds. So it's been a long, because we got together in 2010, so that's been almost 15 years. And then I found an organization. When I was writing my book, I couldn't find any organization that was doing what was needed to do to save American manufacturing. The National Association of Manufacturers have become totally controlled by the global multinational corporations to the harm of domestic-only companies. And they were the ones promoting free trade and going to China and offshoring. So I got connected in end of 2010 through another author of a book that I read, Ian Fletcher, who wrote Free Trade Doesn't Work and What Should Replace It. He connected me to the Coalition for a Prosperous America, which was a national organization composed of manufacturers, farmers and ranchers, and industrial labor to promote doing what we needed to do to save American manufacturing and also home, ranching and farming by American private companies, not multinational corporations. So essentially I volunteered as a member, and I became chair of our California chapter from 2013 to 2018. And they published a second edition of my book in 2012. I rewrote a lot of it because I'd learned a lot more. And then they published my book, Rebuild Manufacturing, the Key to American Prosperity, that came out in the fall of 2017. And I sent a copy of my book to President Trump and Ivanka and every major radio and talk show host in the country. I got a form letter back from President Trump, and I got a personal note back from Ivanka. Years later, actually 3 years ago, I got a chance to give a book in person to Eric Trump at one of the Reawaken events. And the Coalition for Prosperous America paid for me to give a copy of my book to 45 of the California 53 congressional representatives as I went to visit their offices, because every year I would visit their offices and either meet with the congressman or his district directors between 2013 and 2018. So that, and then I was continuing to blog, so I've now been blogging for 15 years and have over 300 articles on my website, savingusmanufacturing.com.
Savingusmanufacturing.com. I would encourage anyone that's listening, go over there right now and take a look.
Because I wrote an article last fall about what manufacturers need to survive and grow. And then when President Trump was elected, I broke it down into 2 articles, what he could do by executive order and what Congress needed to do by passing legislations. So those were 2 articles I wrote in December and early January. So, and then I just wrote, my last article was what executive orders Trump already signed that did one of the things I recommended in my article. So that's where I am currently. So that's my work. And it's because ElectroFab Sales is a manufacturer's rep sales agency for small American manufacturers that can't afford to hire a salaried salesperson. And we are paid commissions on what we sell after invoices get paid. And we represent all the main ways to make a mechanical part, although in the past we sold circuit boards and connectors before they all went to China. But we represent like a machine shop, a sheet metal fab, plastic molder, rubber molder, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, stampings, chemical etching, all the ways to make a mechanical part of a product, whether it's an airplane or whether it's medical equipment or telecommunications. So broad-based target market. Anybody that makes a tangible product probably needs something we could make.
Yeah, it sounds like that's one of the main advantages of maybe finding and working with a manufacturer's rep is they kind of know where all of those pieces are and, can kind of link you with the right people that have both the capability as well as probably the product specific knowledge to do what a customer needs to do.
Exactly, because we're dealing with engineers that are designing new products, and we're dealing with their purchasing agents at the companies. So that's who our contacts are.
I've met several manufacturers' reps over the years, and I kind of vaguely knew what they did, but I never really thought of it in terms of the holistic product development approach. So, you're going to be at the Del Mar Electronics Show.
Yeah,
also.
We'll be exhibiting ElectroFab Sales. We'll have a booth at the show. We've been in the show since 1997.
Long time.
Yeah. I think we were in the second year after it started, and I personally am friends with the owner of the show.
Yeah, that's great. And the seminar you'll be giving, you actually, I think, mentioned the title of it earlier, which is How to Reshore Manufacturing to America Using Total Cost of Ownership Analysis.
Right. I'm going to focus on the progress we've made because we have made progress since 2010. The turning point was actually the beginning of 2010 when we started to reshore. And there were issues before doing a total cost of ownership. I already had companies that had come back in my 2009 book, but it was for quality problems, and it was for substitution of materials, and also for faster delivery to be more flexible and responsive to your customers. Because let's face it, from China, it's coming on a slow boat from China.
One thing I before getting into the talk a little bit deeper, one thing that I think people will kind of assume when we talk about reshoring U.S. manufacturing is this idea that we should be making, every single circuit board for a toaster oven here in the U.S., whereas some other folks who are, closer to the advocacy side, they advocate more, we should be making those advanced products that are critical to national security and, maybe really the critical pieces for certain high value products like, the circuit board for an iPhone, let's say. Maybe it's a good idea to make some of that here. They also advocate like spreading the capacity around. So if you just take all the manufacturing capacity and move it here to the US, well, then you kind of have the reverse problem that we've had since COVID, which is, during COVID, you couldn't get the chips in fast enough. And if you just have all the capacity here, then you can't get the chips out or the boards out fast enough to get to your customers. So give us a little more nuance on this perspective. What do you think the manufacturing mix in the U.S. should look like?
I think manufacturing worldwide is going to need to become regional, where you have regional manufacturers supporting their region, because the basic fact is built on the fact that manufacturing jobs created the middle class. We lose manufacturing jobs, we lose the middle class. So yes, we were ahead in high technology products for years and years, but now China's caught up with us. So we can't just manufacture those high tech products in the country. And we also have the problem of, the supply chains need to be compressed because we are globally moving products all over the world by ship and by air. And it's not responsive to the new desire of consumers to want somewhat customized products. You can't do that when you're mass producing in another company and you're getting a whole ship container full of all the same parts that you know are just standard. So in the future, and I've actually have done a presentation called The Future of Manufacturing. And when we see, people went to China for lower labor rates, but some of them went to China when they didn't have any real need to, because the actual input of manufactured parts was maybe labor cost was only 20 to 30% of the cost of the product. If a product has under 30% labor content in it, you may have not saved money going to China because of the cost of increased inventory for safety stock, the cost of, quality problems, communication problems, dealing with people overseas, the time lag to get your parts. So that's the basis of that total cost of ownership, that you have all those factors that are quantified into a formula that you can now actually use to see if you're saving money by going to China or whether you could have it domestically and come out the same equal. Because, the total cost is everything related to the cost of that, making that product. So labor is only one part of it. So but even, with automation, things that used to be labor intensive are no longer labor intensive because they've been automated. And we have robotics and new technologies and cobots and, so those technologies are changing how productive and cost effective a manufacturer in the United States can be. And it's increased their ability to produce products cheaper and faster now than they could before. So that's the biggest change, is that the input of technology is changing the way we do things.
One of the questions that this brings up, I think, is, let's suppose a company wanted to move let's say 50% of their manufacturing from China into the US. They wanted to take advantage of a shorter supply chain. They wanted to be closer to their customers, whatever, right? One of the challenges that the folks at IPC and even, here at Altium, that we often talk about is two issues. One of them is workforce development. There just aren't enough people trained to do this stuff. And then another issue, which has been brought up by Sean Kincaid on a recent podcast episode, was that we don't even make the production equipment here in the US. You have to go overseas just to get the production equipment.
That's true. Yes, that's definitely true. We've really lost a lot of our machine tool industry making those machines that we use for manufacturing. And that is a factor. But the reverse of that is some of those machines are so costly to ship that some of those manufacturers have set up plants in the United States now making them, which we can see that from all the car manufacturers that came to the United States that have plants here, Nissan, Toyota, BMW, etc., because it's expensive to ship cars overseas. So that's another factor. I just wrote, my last article was about workforce development and how we can solve some innovative solutions to solving the skills gap. Because if we could be short of over 1 million jobs by 2030 of the people qualified for manufacturing jobs. And some people are afraid that automation and robotics and artificial intelligence are going to be eliminating jobs. And they are. When we can see it, we go to a store now and we have, an automatic kiosk to check out instead of a cashier. But manufacturing jobs actually need a lot of people doing things, to run the machines, to program the machines. And that's not going to be replaced by a robot or artificial intelligence. You can have programs to speed up. Artificial intelligence can use to write faster programs and speed up processes, but it's not going to take the place of a person doing hands-on work. So fortunately, over the last 10 years in particular, we've seen an increased emphasis on workforce training. The community colleges are taking the lead, and they have done the best job in setting up programs where you can get certificates in specific manufacturing skills such as machining and welding and programming and being a technician for medical equipment or a technician for even airplanes. So all over the country, because when I was writing for Industry Week, I got to travel around the country and go visit manufacturers in other states. They would pay my expenses to go do that. And all over the country, it's the community colleges that are taking the lead now. And part of it is they've been able to use a curriculum developed by SME, which used to stand for Society of Mechanical Engineers. And they have a subsidiary called Tooling U that can provide this curriculum for the manufacturing certificate programs at the community colleges. It can also be used in apprenticeship programs. And we have funding here in California for apprenticeship programs, and a lot of other states do also. Like South Carolina, the state of South Carolina provides free training to anybody hiring more than 10 people for a new manufacturer that's moving to the area. So apprenticeship programs. There's also coalitions of manufacturers that have gone together to work with a community college to do apprenticeship programs. There's even high schools now, and SME was one of the leaders to get these schools involved. They're called prime schools, and SME supports them with the curriculum and some funding, and you can actually get skills in manufacturing jobs right at high school level. And graduate to get your first job. You're going to be, a beginner, but not a journeyman, but you can at least have a certificate in, say, machining or welding or programming when you get out of high school without having to go to a community college.
So, I mean, this is all encouraging, right? And if you look at, some of these things that you mentioned happening kind of at the state level, and then you look at what the industry groups like, IPC and Altium and some other companies are trying to do, I do see a lot of dedication to workforce development, both around design and engineering, as well as manufacturing. And I think that's all well and good. I see kind of a bigger problem, which is that I often feel like the approach to workforce development is a very field of dreams approach. If you build it, they will come. And I just wonder how well that's going to work out, because if you look at popular culture and what kids seem to care about today, they care a lot more about being, TikTok influencers or writing code than they do about, getting their hands dirty building a physical product.
Oh yes, and that's definitely been a problem, particularly getting young girls to even go take the STEM courses. They'll need to have a technical kind of job. So I've also been involved with some people that started programs at the middle school and early high school to get children interested in manufacturing jobs. One of the things that was really having an influence was the maker fairs that were being held prior to COVID. And we had 5 years of having the maker fairs in San Diego and Balboa Park. And that would get families coming, and you could actually have hands-on experience at the maker fairs to do something. And it was really, and then there's maker places that have been springing up all over the country where there is actual equipment to use to manufacture a product, and workspace, sell space, and you become a member of the maker place, and you have access to using the equipment as a monthly member. And it's a way for startup companies to get started and having, making their prototypes and getting into their initial low volume production. So they're functioning, a maker place now is sort of functioning as a combination, and you can take classes in how to use the equipment too. So it's functioning almost like a small business incubator now for technology. And again, I've visited several of them, written about several of them. We have one of the largest ones in the country right here in Southern California. The Urban Workshop in Irvine is one of the largest maker spaces.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I guess if next time I'm in California, I'll have to check it out. I go down every year for PCB West, but I don't get outside of Santa Clara very much, unfortunately.
There's maker spaces all over the country. So
I wish I knew more about this. This is I've heard of, maker events. And I know it's kind of like, introducing kids to, cool projects that might be put on by hobbyists or by, local companies, that kind of thing. But I don't know much more about it.
Well, if you get a chance to go to one, go visit one or go to a maker fair or something, because they're interesting. And we have a couple of big events related to that go on in San Diego annually. So
okay, I'm gonna have to check it out once we're done. I'll Google it.
Right? Yeah, I don't know how. I haven't ever researched what's going on in Oregon as far as the community colleges or the maker spaces. So that's one of the states I don't know anything about.
I went to Portland State University. I taught at Portland State University for several years, and looking at the environment there, it felt like the engineering training at the time, they had, of course, the electrical engineering programs and everything like that, but it felt like there was a stronger focus on computer science because they wanted to get more software people. And, this is 15 years ago when I started, working on my PhD and when I'd gotten my master's. So that was right around the time I started teaching. And, there was that big focus on computer science, but there was still just the hardcore focus on semiconductors. And it feels like if you're going into electrical engineering these days, that's the focus. And if you learn manufacturing, it's in the context of semiconductors. But the reality is you need all this other stuff.
Oh, yes, you do. Right. Yeah. And there are, there's mechanical engineering degrees, and there's design engineering degrees and manufacturing engineering degrees too. So I've been part of all of those. I've spoken to all of those organizations.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful now that there is kind of more of a corporate focus on maybe broadening the base for manufacturing, that companies start getting more involved in the education system and start telling schools, we need people that can do A, B, and C, because at the end of the day, I think it's those investment dollars that drive the push to get students to do certain types of degrees and programs.
And that was one of the things that came out of all the efforts in the 90s for diversifying San Diego's manufacturing industry is that we got the partners in the colleges. And whether it was the four-year colleges, UCSD and San Diego State has a maker space right on campus, or the community colleges. And right now in San Diego, all the community colleges have different programs for getting skills related to manufacturing. One college focuses on everything that's needed to know to go into the biomedical and medical device, field. So, and the best all-around one is in the North County of San Diego near Carlsbad. So, Miracosta College.
This is all great to hear, of course, and I'm sure as more of this stuff pops up, we're going to try and get more and more folks from the academic side on here to talk about this stuff. One thing that I'm wondering, though, I've asked several people this next question, and it does relate to the investment dollars and kind of the broader technology trends. And I think those technology trends are important because they do encourage kids to get involved in technology. I'm wondering if, newer technologies, specifically around AI and data center, are going to be enough to do two things. Number one, create a greater investment in homegrown electronics manufacturing, especially for advanced products like ultra-high density circuit boards, as well as to get more kids to realize, hey, hardware is really cool. I want to go build hardware and not just build semiconductors, but like actually build, the GPU cards and the data center infrastructure and all that stuff. What is your perspective on that? What do you think about that?
I think that is an increasing trend, and it's got a lot of components to it. I think we all saw the vulnerability we had during COVID for being able to get things when they were being manufactured in other countries. The supply chain became totally broken, and more CEOs are seeing the need to have, sources within their own country and not have everything outsourced out of state. And I think more and more CEOs are also seeing the trend for more consumers wanting made in USA products. It's now a real plus to be able to say made in USA for your product. And there are websites and a lot more sources now where you can go and find, a made in America products, and a very diverse selection. madeinusa.com is one of the biggest ones now. So I think that trend is going to be increasing the desirability to invest in American companies in all areas of technology, and not just AI. And additive manufacturing is also a game changer too, where you can make production quality parts, metal parts, using additive manufacturing.
Yeah, the reason this all kind of came up for me was just seeing what the really big tech companies have done with investing in nuclear power, because I never would have had it on my bingo card that, Google and Microsoft or whoever, they're going to not only power their nuclear or their data centers with nuclear power, but they're actually going to invest in it and, almost do it as like a joint venture.
Right.
Who would have thought that?
Oh, I know.
Why can't they do that with electronics manufacturing here in the U.S.? I guess that's the $64 billion question.
Right, it is. Yeah, if anybody knows the answer to that, they'll be a billionaire. Elon Musk has certainly seen trends in advance and taken advantage of opportunities.
That's true. I guess if only we all had that kind of foresight, right? We all wouldn't have to do this anymore.
Well, and I think we have to get the opinion of, hey, manufacturing is something cool. Manufacturing's fun. You can make something. You can have something tangible. You can design something. I'm also on the board of the San Diego Inventors Forum, and so I've been involved with a lot of inventors over the years, and I've been on the board for 10 years. So it's of course we didn't get to meet in person during the COVID shutdowns, but we are again. And there's no lack of inventiveness in this country. There's, millions of new inventions every year, but unfortunately, most of them don't go on to becoming a successful product sold in the marketplace.
It's like what they say about startups, right? 90% or something of new businesses fail. Same thing.
And a lot of inventors are not entrepreneurs. There's a difference between an inventor and an entrepreneur. So they know how to invent. They're one idea after another. They can invent it, but they need somebody to take that invention and turn it into a marketable product.
Well, we're over a half hour now and getting up here on time, but one thing I wanted to give you a chance to talk about, just shifting gears back to the core thing that I wanted to have on here to talk about was with reshoring manufacturing. I guess there are two topics here. First, in your seminar at the Del Mar Electronics Show, you're talking about total cost of ownership analysis. If you could just briefly tell us what that is, and if someone's going to show up to the Del Mar show, what they could learn at your seminar.
It's not just the cost of the materials used to make the product. There's actually line items for like cost of inventory, because if you have to have safety stock. If you're getting it from overseas and it's going to take 12 weeks delivery versus 3 weeks domestically. So you've got to have that inventory to be able to get products to your customer. So there's the cost of shipping. There's the cost of customs duties. There's the cost of quality. Are you going to, how many parts get rejected that are coming from offshore versus made in the USA? There's the cost of, the shipping containers have just skyrocketed in their cost. So that's changing dynamics too. Any product that's big and heavy is no longer cost effective to be bringing from offshore. So that's another factor. Even things like the hula hoop, that's now made domestically because it's just have a whole container full of air. So I give case studies of companies that have brought back, and sometimes it's because of automation, like manufacturing plastic forks and spoons and knives back in the United States. Yes, because it can be totally automated. There's almost no labor involved in it. So those are some of the factors that go in the formula of coming up with your total cost of ownership.
Okay, I see.
And unfortunately, most purchasing departments are placing orders on the basis of the cheapest piece price, and they're not taking any of those other factors. Some companies allow them to use the shipping cost to make it called landed cost. But most companies are doing purchase price variance, which is the cheapest, and then some do the landed, but very few companies are really doing a total cost of ownership analysis. That's the problem.
I would have thought, I guess, again, I don't work at a purchasing department of the manufacturer. I've never actually worked at a manufacturer. I do contract to produce things at manufacturers. But I would have thought that people at a purchasing department would, or even a CFO or somebody would take account of all these things. And you're saying they really don't do that. Okay. I think there are also some other intangibles that maybe people could take account of, like the potential for, your IP being breached if you send it overseas.
That's a big thing. Intellectual property theft has been one of the main reasons that some companies have come back. Because of that, China substitutes materials. They don't honor your patent. They could be making a product. The biggest danger is if you have one manufacturer in China that's doing everything. And so they're dealing with all the little subcontractors, and you're getting a finished product shipped to you. That they could be making a finished product shipped out their back door under another name, because they don't honor our patents. Then you get into the warranty costs. If somebody is buying a product that's really a knockoff, thinking it's yours, you have warranty costs. So that's another factor in that total cost of ownership.
Yeah, and I think also, heavens forbid, if you have to do a recall, right? And then how do you go and collect on the cost of doing that recall?
The biggest problem is China's won't take back rejected parts because they're interpreting one of their laws as it's illegal for them to import a defective part. So they're counting returns that people want to send them back that they made, so they won't give you credit for sending back rejected parts and them providing a good part in place of it. Right. Not to mention, some companies found out, hey, I got to send somebody to China on a regular basis. Just think of the travel costs of sending somebody to China once a month, once a quarter. It all adds up.
I think the last thing that I wanted to allow you to talk about here is, again, bringing it full circle. Based on your analysis of the electronics manufacturing situation today and probably the manufacturing in the broader ecosystem, what would you say is needed to save U.S. manufacturing?
Well, that's a big question because I addressed it. Manufacturers need cheaper energy, which President Trump is addressing. There's a lot of executive orders. He did it in his first term. So they need cheaper energy. They need to have affordable taxes. So we need the Affordable Tax Cut and Jobs Act, to be extended. It's going to expire next year. So manufacturers need affordable taxes. They need to have incentives for reshoring, whether it's tax credits or whatever, that will help. And so that's one of the things being included. We need to have protection because this free trade world that we're in, we don't have a level playing field. We are, and that's why Trump is talking about charging tariffs, because the World Trade Organization, everybody that belonged to it was supposed to reduce the tariffs down to practically zero. But then that was at the disadvantage of all of our domestic companies because of those other factors that sent manufacturing overseas, the costs. We also have to reduce the number of regulations that American manufacturers have to comply with, because we're the most stringent country in the world for environmental and safety regulations. Now, we don't want to have a polluted world, but there are some that have gone overboard. And we need to look at regulations and say, okay, are all these needed to protect our environment? Can we reduce some of the regulations and not get into such nitty-pitty expensive, nitpicking expensive things to comply with all the regulations? So those are some of the factors. And then, we need also funding by government for some of the quality education to provide the manufacturing workers. So we need, whether it's apprenticeship programs or whether it's, supporting, your training program at the local community college. So we have to have that. That's a role government plays.
There's a lot there, and it sounds
it was a whole nother article.
For sure, and it sounds like it could be its own podcast, a 2-hour podcast.
And my website has it by category. You can look up whether it's workforce development or trade policy or legislation. You can go and look at the articles that were written on those subjects.
Well, I encourage folks to go over to your website. It was savingusmanufacturing.com?
Yes.
Okay. I encourage everyone to go over to savingusmanufacturing.com to learn about all of this. And of course, one more thing, your book. You have written a book. Tell us again, what was the name of the book?
Yes, it is Rebuild Manufacturing, the Key to American Prosperity. It's available in both paperback and Kindle.
Last but not least, Del Mar Electronics Show. If you want to learn about some of the stuff that we've talked about, I encourage you to go listen to Michelle's seminar Wednesday at 10 a.m. at the Del Mar Electronics Show 2025.
April 23rd.
Yes, April 23rd. Yes, thank you so much. It was great to meet you. It was great to talk to you. As all of this stuff continues to develop, I would love to have you come back on and talk to us some more.
Be happy to do so. Bye.
To everyone that's been listening, we've been talking with Michele Nash-Hoff, president of ElectroFab Sales. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You'll be able to keep up with all of our podcast episodes and tutorials as they come out. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.